Welcome to the Her Vibe is Pretty podcast, where you'll be guided on how to step up into your evolved woman,
design your dream life, and start living it. Let's get vibey.
Hey loves, welcome back to the show. This is part 2 of what's eventually going to be a 4-part episode, all on food and body. If you haven't listened to part 1, which dropped yesterday, make sure you go back and do that. You don't need to listen to these in order. So if you happen to be coming across part 2 and you haven't yet listened to part 1, maybe by this time, part 3 and part 4 are out. Don't worry about it. You don't need to go in order, but definitely be sure to check out the other parts to the show because you guys asked the best questions last week when I asked for your questions on food and body stuff. So if you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, the reason I'm doing this is because I used to struggle with my relationship to food and my body. I struggled with binge and emotional eating for at least 10 years. I struggled with my relationship to my body image for also at least 10 years, probably even longer than that. I've definitely found points in my upbringing and in my childhood where I could identify a poor relationship to food and my body. And I struggled with it for a really long time. I didn't know that there was a way out. I didn't know that there was a peaceful way out, I should say, because I thought that the way out was to count macros and overwork myself in the gym and always be fighting with food. But that is not the answer. And if you're listening to this, you probably realize that. So I wanted to do a deep dive and answer your guys' questions specifically. So that's what you'll get here. You'll gain a lot of wisdom and knowledge from these answers, a lot of questions that will open your mind. And if you want to go even deeper into this yourself, if you want to start your own journey to healing your relationship to food and your body as of now, so if you're listening in real time or a week later, Diet Culture Dropout, my signature course to ending the diet binge and emotional eating cycles so you can finally feel comfortable in your body, create a healthy relationship to food, and live the free, peaceful life you desire, is now open for enrollment. This is the last launch of Diet Culture Dropout, which is sad for some, and also it's exciting at the same time because in 2022, I'm rebranding and completely upgrading the course. Not that it's not amazing now, it absolutely is, and you can find proof of this on the Diet Culture Dropout page, which I will link in the show notes. You can go and read other members' wins, other students' progress, their testimonials, what they have to say about the course. But as I learn, grow, and evolve, things shift for me and I have more to give. And it's been about a year since the first time that I launched this program. And in a year, a lot can happen. So I am upgrading the program. All of the content that's in there is still going to be in there, but it's going to be upgraded. So if you get in now, first and foremost, right now, the content in there is specifically for food and body stuff. And so it'll speak really directly to you. In 2022, we're going to kind of shift it into numbing, avoiding, and suppressing in general, whether it's with food or Netflix or wine or a toxic relationship, career, overworking, over exercising, whatever it is. But right now it's specific to food and body. So if you resonate with all of this, now's the time to get in, especially because when the upgrades happen, the course price will increase. Right now we're doing a holiday launch, so you can get $300 plus off, depending on if you pay in full or if you do the payment plan. So you'll automatically get that right now just for it being the holiday launch, it's discounted. But then if you enroll within the next week, so you have about 6 days by December 8th of 2021, you can use the code PrettyVibeTribe for an additional $50 off. And we all need it. I obviously know from you guys' questions that binge and emotional eating is a struggle, and even more so around the holidays. So this holiday special also comes with the bonus of Hungry for a Wholesome Holiday, which is a mini course. So if you wanted to do the mini course now, it's 5 modules. Each one is less than 20 minutes. You could do that to get you through the holidays, and then you could hit the ground running with module 1 of Diet Culture Dropout on the first of the year. You can literally do whatever you want. You're going to have access to this for the rest of your life until Sarah Jean Harkin Incorporated no longer exists. So you can literally flow through it as you wish. Some people do 1 module a week with the journaling prompts and the meditation. Some do a module every other week. It just depends. Everybody's pace is different. That's why I made it self-paced. So the link is in the show notes to check it out to see if it's aligning. But let's get into the rest of your questions because, like I said, there's still a lot of wisdom and knowledge to gain here in this episode. All right, our first question of part 2 is how to avoid the holiday catch-22, eating too much and regretting it versus barely eating and regretting it. The simple, logical answer is find the middle. And I know you probably already realized that, but this really can be accomplished when you truly, deeply cultivate the mind-body connection. And what I want you to play with a little bit, because I hear you saying how to avoid. What we focus on, we create more of. So if you're focusing on avoiding eating too much or avoiding eating too little or avoiding gaining weight or avoiding failing at something or avoiding a conversation, we're focusing on the thing still. When we think things or say things like, I don't want X, Y, and Z, I don't want this, I don't want that, that's usually the thing we get, because what we focus on, we create more of. And putting I don't want in front of something or I want to avoid something doesn't really do much. Like that wording and those thoughts in front of it, what's happening, even when we're like, I want to avoid eating too much, I want to avoid eating too little, we're still focusing on the problem. So I'm inviting you, and what we focus on expands. So you're most likely going to get that reality if you're focusing on avoiding these things. So I'm going to invite you to reframe this and ask yourself, during the holidays, how can I intuitively eat? How can I nourish my body? How can I listen to my body when it's full? How can I allow myself to eat the things I desire to eat at the holiday parties and still feel really nourished and alive afterward? So ask yourself those questions instead and put your focus there, because it's going to be a lot easier to actually find your middle ground when you focus on how can I do these things that feel in alignment with my blueprint of health and with my highest self. And then in episode number 1, I gave a lot of tips on just slowing down when you're eating your meals, being present with what you eat. Those all play a huge role here in finding the middle. And then lastly, I just want to leave it with, because I hear the word regret in here a lot, eating too much, regretting, eating too little, regretting. If you end up eating too much or eating too little, because this stuff truly does take time and devotion, see if you can just accept what happened, knowing that the past is in the past. So even the times that we eat too much, and then we have options. We can either be in the energy of, oh, I regret eating too much, I'm too full, why did I eat too much again? When am I ever going to get over this? Am I ever going to be able to intuitively eat and listen to my body? I should feel so guilty, I might gain weight. We can be in that energy. Or we can be like, oh, I ate too much, I'm doing the best I can for what I know. I'm listening to podcasts on food and body stuff. I'm following Sarah on Instagram. I'm reading these books. I'm following these people. I'm taking these courses. I'm doing the best I can for what I know in this moment. And my intention in itself is enough. I'm going to accept that the past is the past. There's no going back and changing it. And all I can do is move forward from this energy of compassion and lightness and open-heartedness. And that's literally all I can do. Because when we hang out in regrets, you guys, I literally have an entire module on forgiveness of thyself and forgiveness of others energetically, because forgiving in a mental manner is not really the same as subconsciously forgiving, which we talked a lot about the subconscious in part 1 of this episode as well. But forgiveness is so important, because the energy of regret keeps us in the patterns that we are regretting, that we regret. All right, moving on. This individual asks, why always choosing food when being emotional? So this specific soul tends to choose food when feeling emotional. Now, I will say, and this is kind of what I was talking about when I was referring to the relaunch of Diet Culture Dropout. That's not going to be the name anymore. The relaunch, the rebrand. Not everybody always chooses food when being emotional. So that's something to actually consider when you're asking yourself this question: why do I always choose food when being emotional? Because, like you guys know, I used to choose food and or Netflix when feeling low vibe. There once was a time in college where I would choose alcohol and wine. I'd be like, I just want to drink. I just want to drink my pain away. I just want to forget about it. Let's drink. There was once a point where I chose to smoke weed. I got in the habit of smoking weed every night in college at one point. So when you ask yourself the question, why do I always choose food when being emotional? Start to reflect and sit there with that question. Here are some of the reasons that you may always choose food when being emotional. First of all, it could be a learned behavior. A lot of the times, the way that our parents handled or didn't handle, I should say, emotions is seen and taken on by us as kids. So start there and reflect on your guardians or your parents or who you were raised by. Did they maybe choose food when being emotional? Start to reflect on their patterns. So once again, there's an entire module on quote unquote mother wounding and a whole module on father wounding and diet culture dropout. And these seem intense. And for some, they definitely are. And at the end of the day, what those terms mean is, for example, mother wounding is okay, my mom had all these patterns and habits and limiting beliefs and thoughts, and I have taken them on. Father wounding is, oh, my dad implied unintentionally, or maybe sometimes in some cases intentionally, that I was not enough unless I proved myself. And so now I'm still living my life from that place. So our parents can pass things on to us that aren't ours, that are actually getting in the way of our adult life and holding us back from our highest selves. So start there and be like, was turning to food when I'm feeling emotional, was that a thing that my mom used to do or my dad used to do, or maybe they still do? So there's an idea. Another reason could be because it's the easiest vice to turn to. It's typically always there. I feel like a lot of us listening probably always have food in the cupboards. And so if that's the case for you, it's always there, or it's like the most easy to access because I'm sure you have a grocery store by you that you can either walk to or drive to. So that could be another reason is you're so uncomfortable with feeling those low vibing feels, or maybe you're uncomfortable with feeling the high vibe feels. I just talked about this yesterday in one of my breathwork sessions. We have something called a pleasure capacity. And when we hit that pleasure capacity, when we're feeling really good and we start to hit that pleasure capacity, sometimes we self-sabotage with one of our vices because there's a lot of story as to why we shouldn't feel really good. So anyway, it might be that your body is so uncomfortable feeling the feels that it needs a vice that it can go to instantly. That's most likely always going to be there. And so, like I said, easiest access, it's always there. And yeah, that's where we'll start. So observe those. Just know that once again, if you choose food when you're being emotional, there's something deeper underneath. So starting with the prompts and the questions and the curiosities that I just gave you should help you figure that out. And actually, you know what? One more thing I want to say on this, and because if you're listening to this, the chances are you struggle with your relationship to food. And I'm inviting you guys. So like I mentioned in part one, the feminine energy is what helps us heal these relationships to food. The compassion, the open-heartedness, the understanding. So something that really, really helped me on my journey is actually, and the mind might freak out when hearing this, it was actually creating gratitude and thanking myself for choosing food, for choosing food when being emotional. I ended up shifting because, as I mentioned in the last question, what we focus on expands. So there was a point in my journey where I would focus on not binge eating. I don't want to binge eat. I don't want to overeat. I'm not going to do this again. I'm not. And so I was still focusing on the problem. So of course I kept doing it. I started to flip the narratives of all of these things. And one of them being, I flipped the narrative from, I hate that I turned to food when being emotional to, wow, I'm really grateful. I'm actually really grateful that I turned to food when being emotional versus turning to drugs, versus turning to alcohol. I definitely turned to alcohol at one point, but at the end of the day, the biggest vice was always food. So I ended up creating gratitude. I'm grateful that I turned to food instead of gambling. I'm grateful that I turned to food instead of porn. Whatever, there's so many other vices out there. I personally, and maybe some people feel the opposite. Maybe some people are like, oh, I'm grateful that my vice was gambling rather than food. And that's beautiful too. But for me, I was like, how can I express gratitude for this? Because me personally, and like this is my personal experience and this is my personal story. But I would have rather turned to food when I was struggling with feeling my feels and I was in the phase of numbing them. I'm glad that I was turning to food rather than drugs or alcohol or something else. So maybe, just maybe, you can start to have that perspective shift. And once again, the mind in you might be like, that's not going to work. If you are grateful for turning to food, you're going to keep doing it. And I beg to differ because that's what my mind said at first too. And this was when I was in like a lot of resistance to even healing my relationship to food. That's a whole nother story, but a lot of the times it can actually be scary for us to heal our relationship to food. And that's when I was in that point of like, I don't know who I am when I'm not binge and emotionally eating. And that was a scary thing for me. Once I broke open and started to crack open and soften, I was finally able to be like, okay, I'm grateful that I'm choosing the food. And that's really when my relationship to food started to heal. All right, let's move on. Next question is how to listen to my body to learn what true hunger cues feel like. Another amazing question. I told you guys these are all so good. This is a journey, my love. It truly, truly is. But for me, first of all, the first thing that helped me was cultivating the mind body connection. And I know I keep coming back to that, but it's for a reason. A lot of the times the minds think, I know what a mind body connection is. Like my head is on my body right now. It's connected to my body. I feel connected to my body when I move it. I feel connected to my body when I'm sitting in the sauna. I feel connected to my body when I'm going to bed, waking up in the morning. Yes. And there's a whole nother level of mind body connection when you really get into this work. In that mind body connection is what really helps you start to decipher what true hunger cues feel like versus like physical hunger cues versus emotional hunger cues. So finding ways to start to cultivate that mind body connection. I have a free meditation at the link in my bio on Instagram. That's 7 minutes that will help you start to cultivate that. So that's a resource for you there. Another thing that really helped me was before I would grab food, I would just take a couple of moments to drop into my body. I do this literally to this day. I just did it like a couple hours ago. There was a thought in the mind because, okay, so I have definitely healed my relationship to food in my body. And the thoughts of turning to food, the thoughts of eating because I quote unquote should, the conditioning is still there. But what's different now is my subconscious is super turned on and I'm so much more self-aware of what's happening. So for example, earlier today, I saw the time and I'm like, it's been about 4 hours since I ate breakfast. Maybe I should eat lunch. And in that moment, I stopped. And this is what I'm inviting you into. I stopped and I dropped into my body. I sat there in silence for a moment and I'm like, what does my body feel like right now? And in that moment, it felt very content. It felt very energized. It felt very at peace. So that was my indication that I'm not hungry yet. This is definitely a quote unquote emotional or a conditioned hunger cue. Because once upon a time, for years, I counted macros and ate according to a time schedule. Like every X amount of hours you have to eat. I did that so many times. And so dropping into your body before choosing food can really, really help. And dropping into your body after you eat can also help. So if you have a couple bites of something and you're already like, oh, I'm feeling heavy, I'm feeling lethargic, that's probably a good indication that it was actually more of an emotional cue. Just paying attention to the pains in your body that come up throughout the day and getting curious about them. So this is a really interesting story. I used to have the typical belly growl. And to be honest, when I was in my struggle with food and my body, I didn't have my belly growls very often because I was in a phase a cycle of binge and emotional eating. So the opposite was true for me. I usually felt bloated all day and very rarely experienced my tummy growling because I never gave it a chance to. I was literally eating all day, every day. Once I healed my relationship to food in my body and I started to tap deeper into my physical hunger cues, I started to literally I could hear it. So I would hear the growls, I would feel the growls, and that was my indication that, oh, my body's physically hungry. What I've realized as of lately, this has happened like the past year, and I'm not sure what it is or like what it has to do with. It's kind of odd, but I started noticing a sharp pain in my stomach. And I have a history of gut health issues. And so this pain in my stomach wasn't it used to not be abnormal, but now that I'm on the other side of healing my gut, it's pretty abnormal. And so I'd feel this pain in my stomach and I would just get curious about it. Like, what is this? Why is this here? What did I eat earlier that could have upset my stomach? And curiosity here is like a key for figuring out hunger versus emotional cues. So I'd be like, what did I eat? Is there anything I ate that could have upset my stomach? Usually the answer was no. And what I started realizing, so I would eat anyway, like if I felt that I was maybe a little bit hungry as well. And I noticed that the sharp pain started going away after I ate. So I'm like, interesting. I used to experience belly growls, and not that I don't anymore, I still do, but now I have like this super sharp stomach pain. That's also an indication that I am physically hungry. I say super sharp, that sounds super intense. It's not that intense. I definitely was more dramatic with that, but it's just like a different pain in my stomach than a growl. And then my last tip for you is just to ask yourself before eating, like, what's active for me in my life right now? If you go to, and you know what, this is interesting. I'm reflecting on what I shared with you guys earlier about how the mind in me was like, oh, we should eat lunch. It's been 4 hours. But I was also working a lot prior to that. I was just kind of like, go, go, go. And so that could have been my old innate way of relaxing. So when I was in binge and emotional eating days, I would use food as an excuse to take a break. I should keep working and I need to keep working and I need to get all this stuff done, but I need to eat. So I would use food as an escape to take a break. And so observing what emotions are active and present for you before choosing food can also be a great indication. Is this emotional or is this physical? All right, I gave you a lot there, so I am going to move on. I hope that helps you start to navigate this yourself. Our next question is, can you give me tips on improving balance in eating and how to adjust my thoughts? Okay, so I need a little bit more context on what the thoughts are. If you ask me this question and you want to DM me and give a little bit more of, and I know that this is hard with those poll questions because I forgot it only gives you a certain amount of characters to use. But if you want to give me more details on what your thoughts around food are, I'd be more than happy to drop that into part 3 or part 4. So we'll go into tips on improving the balance in eating. I'm going to keep this one pretty short and sweet. To improve balance in eating. So I'm assuming that what you mean there is balance of foods that are nourishing versus foods that maybe aren't super nourishing and in alignment with your highest self. Intend to nourish your body, to feel good, to feel energized, to feel alive, to feel healthy, to feel motivated, to feel balanced. Intend for that and also let yourself enjoy food too. If you intend to nourish your body every chance that you can get, you are naturally going to choose foods that are in alignment with making you feel really healthy. And I'm actually going to go into that a little bit more on the next question. I'm going to switch up 2 questions here so that these coincide. And it's so important, y'all, like so important. I really want this one to land, to let yourself enjoy food too. I feel like there is a lot of false beliefs that intuitively eating and healing your relationship to food in your body means that you don't eat brownies or cupcakes or cookies anymore. You don't eat cake at a birthday party. That's false. That is so completely false. Healing your relationship to food, a big part of it is actually like letting go of the pressure of food, letting go of the pressure of food and taking away the labels of good and bad and allowing yourself to choose foods that make you feel really, really good. And also allowing yourself to enjoy life. We are in a material world to enjoy it. We are here to enjoy it. Food is meant to be enjoyed. It truly is. Food also can be a connection point in a really beautiful way. It's so important that you let yourself enjoy the foods that you desire to enjoy. I personally have a sweet tooth and I don't deprive that sweet tooth. I truly don't. If I go to a birthday party and there's cake and I desire a piece of cake, I'm going to have a piece of cake. But if I go to a birthday party and I'm feeling really full because I just went out to lunch prior, then I might say no to the cake. Finding balance is all about creating balance by intending to nourish your body and also letting yourself enjoy the foods. That in itself and releasing food rules will get you so far on this journey. All right. And to play into that question, the next question is, why is it always cyclical with healthy/unhealthy eating? In other words, why do I always go through cycles of eating healthy and then not eating healthy and not eating healthy? So in the last question, it was tips on improving balance. And one of my suggestions was intend to nourish your body. So to answer both of those in one, I want you to ask yourself, what is my why underneath eating quote unquote healthy? What is my why under eating in alignment with my blueprint of health? What is my why for choosing foods that make me feel good, for choosing plants and water and sleep and rest and stress reduction? Like, what is my why? So I know it's easy for me to just be like, oh, intend to nourish your body. It can be easier said than done, but it's easier done when you're super attached to your why. And same with the cyclical healthy, unhealthy eating. What that indicates to me is that you might not be super attached to your why under the eating healthy. Like, what is your why and what's usually your main motivator? What is usually your main motivator for eating healthy? Is it because you have pressure to lose weight? Is it because you feel pressured to have the best body? Is it because you feel pressured to look as good as another mom at the school? What is your why? Or maybe your why is a little bit deeper than that. And I'm inviting you to, not that any of those, like, I don't want you guys to think that any of these things are bad. Like, they just are what they are. They're what we're taught to believe. But I want you to go deeper into your why, and I want you to connect to it. So dive deeper within. Now, I want you to decipher what's the why from the mind. So the ones I listed off are probably more mental and conditioned, subconscious wise. What is my why for choosing healthy foods and nourishing foods from the mind, from the subconscious? Is it to look as good as other people? Is it to have a quote unquote good body? Whoever determines what that is, figure it out. And then I want you to attach to your soul's why. Why does your soul desire to eat healthy? I'll give you some examples. Maybe your soul desires to eat healthy because the body is the vessel for it, and the soul really wants to experience this material earth for as long as possible. And therefore, it desires to keep you feeling nourished and elongate your life. Maybe the soul desires to nourish your body so that you can have energy to even wake up in the morning and enjoy the fruits of the material world. It's really, really hard to live life and enjoy your life when you're tired, right? Maybe your soul wants to eat healthy. Oh, this is a good one. This is for me. My soul desires to nourish my body and eat healthy because I know that it plays a huge role in my hormones as a female. I know that what I'm putting in my body can either support my endocrine system, which is creating my hormones, can support my female body parts and my female functions, or what I'm putting in my body can damage them and destroy them. For me personally, I would love to be a mother one day, and I would love, of course, to have my own children. I shouldn't say of course, not everybody wants to do that, and that's fine. But for me, I also do want to adopt, fun fact, but I also want to have my own children. And so that's one of my soul's whys for nourishing my body, is so that I can prepare my body and support my body to grow a human one day. So get more attached. Start there. Just get more attached to your why. And like I said, same with the last question. I say, just intend to nourish your body, but I want you as well. I want all of you to start getting attached. Like, why do I even with the binge and emotional eating or this restriction, why do I want to heal my relationship to food in my body? What's the point? What's available to me once I nourish my body, once I eat healthy consistently, once I learn how to listen to my intuitive hunger cues, once I learn how to stop eating when I'm full, what's available to me? Get so attached to your why, and that will keep you motivated. And with the cyclical, healthy, unhealthy eating, I'm just curious, and this is going to go deeper, and I need to wrap this response up right now. And I literally take you through all of this in Diet Culture Dropout, but when you are in a phase of unhealthy eating, there's more to it. So look back on your life and look at the phases where you were eating unhealthy and be like, okay, what was happening in my life at the time? Was I super stressed because of work? Was I super anxious? Was I worried? Was I in fear? Was I in doubt? Was I sad? Was I grieving? What was happening then? Almost guaranteed that it's attached to some emotion. That is my response for that. Let me know if you feel complete, and let's move on. All right, our next question is, I don't want to / believe in cutting out yummy foods, but I also want to feel good after eating. Is that possible? My answer is yes, it is absolutely possible. And while I'm actually going to give you logical ways to do this in part 4 of this episode, which will be launched in probably a month or so, in that episode, I'll talk about my best tips and tricks for making nourishing food taste even better in a really simple way. I like to call myself a very lazy cook because it's true. I don't get super fancy in the kitchen, but I'm obsessed with everything that I make. So that episode will give you more of that. But for now, I want to give you a mental and emotional piece to this. Can you think of the term yummy as in yummy to the body, yummy to the soul, rather than yummy to the mind? I'm going to say that again. Can you reframe the way you see the word yummy, the way you think of the word yummy? Can you start to approach that word as yummy to the body? Is this yummy to my body? Is this yummy to my soul? Or is this yummy to my mind? The foods that are yummy to the mind now, once you start to connect to your blueprint of health, to your soul, to your highest self, once you start to create that mind-body connection, as I mentioned before, our souls know how to naturally eat healthy, and that feels good to them and it tastes good as well. But when we're disconnected from that voice, it can be really easy to believe that yummy foods are only the ones that make us feel like crap after, which is definitely not the case. But as you begin to create the mind-body connection, you're going to naturally crave more foods that make you feel good, and you're going to start to enjoy them more. Your taste buds will shift. So for me, at one time, to me, yummy was a Big Mac meal from McDonald's. Yummy was a Taco Bell quesadilla. Yummy was rolls from one of our local restaurants called Brands. Now, so that was when I was in my days of just having a poor relationship to food in my body. Those things were yummy. Now, I do not think that those things are yummy at all. I would probably throw up physically eating them. And that's because I am so much more connected to what's yummy to my body rather than what's yummy to my mind. And when I nourish myself, things that are yummy to my body, for me, that's vegetables, avocados. It's pretty much all I eat. Whole brown rice. What else do I eat? Quinoa. Pretty much at this point, my diet is all vegetables and I absolutely love it. Vegetables are my favorite foods. And you guys, I'm serious when I say I used to hate them, literally hate them. Ask anybody who knew me in high school. I did not eat vegetables and now I love them. So your taste buds will shift as you start to connect to the inner truth that the foods that make you feel the best actually are the ones that are the most yummy to you. They really are. And this is like a fun story too. My partner, Zach, and we go out to these restaurants, right? And Since he started dating me, he eats more in alignment with his blueprint of health than before he started dating me. And so we'll go out to restaurants, and until recently, actually, I shouldn't say that. He's still not quite there yet. And it's okay. He's on his journey. But usually when we go out to eat, he chooses a meal that maybe doesn't make him feel the greatest or isn't maybe in alignment with his highest health. And he usually does so because, we don't keep that in the house. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't judge him for it at all. But I usually choose the meal that is still in alignment with my highest self, that still tastes good. And every time, okay, I should say every time, if he listens to this, he's going to be like, yeah, right. Every time, but literally this last time that we go out to eat, he always takes a bite of mine and he likes it way better. And it's because his taste buds are shifting. And even though his mind is still choosing what to order, I can tell that his taste buds are starting to be in alignment with his highest health because of the fact that he always likes my food better. So can you start to think of yummy instead of from the mind, from the body? What makes my body feel yummy? What makes my soul feel yummy? And at the same time, like not restricting yourself either, because does a piece of cake always make my body feel like its highest self? No. And do I still choose to eat a piece of cake to celebrate a birthday here and there? Yeah, I do. I will say that Zach and I also love these cupcakes from our local cafe, Bodhi Tree. If any of you live in West Michigan, you have to, I think it's Kind Crumbs is the brand. They're gluten-free, dairy-free. I don't know if they have refined sugar in them or not, but I usually feel pretty good actually after eating those cupcakes. So just saying, of course, allow yourself to eat the foods that you desire, the foods that taste good, and start to reprogram the mind to associate the word yummy with, is this going to be yummy for my body and for my highest energy and to make me feel light and airy and bright and motivated and energized. All right. And the very last question of part 2, which I'm actually not going to answer here, but I'm going to guide you, is how to handle relatives giving you a hard time for eating clean, not drinking, etc. Family and relatives are big drinkers, and me not drinking is a quote unquote buzzkill to them. I actually responded to this one, and so did one of my peers, Jamie, on the IG live chats that we do every Wednesday morning at 9:30 a.m. EST. So if you go to my profile, it's posted there. You'll see like a little cover photo that says tips for a wholesome holiday Thanksgiving prep edition. You'll see like a little pumpkin, a little coffee in the background. Click that and listen to that. We gave you almost an entire half hour. Not the whole thing is all about this answer, but we talked a lot about this and how to navigate this and how to set boundaries. Jamie actually said this quote that's so good, and I'll leave you with this. It goes, "We are done abandoning ourselves for other people's happiness. We are done abandoning ourselves for other people's happiness, for their satisfaction. We're done. We've done it as a society for way too long, and it's led to nothing but burnout, anxiety, stress, unhappiness, feeling stuck in life. We're done." Not saying that it's not okay to care about other people and their feelings. It's a beautiful thing. We're here to love and to give love and to receive love with other humans. And it's so important that we honor ourselves and our needs before we do any of that. So go listen to that. It'll answer your questions. And that is it for part 2. So part 3 will be out next week. That's mostly about body stuff and our relationship to body and self-love. There are a couple more food questions in there, but just a reminder, if you want to enroll in Diet Culture Dropout, you have less than a week to get $50 off. You can take that $50 off of any payment plan or off of the pay in full. You have until December 8th to use that discount code of Pretty Vibe Tribe. So I'll put all of the details in the show notes. You can click the link for the page, read through it, read through the testimonials, read through the shares. We have a private Facebook community. So I guess I'll run you through too. If this is something that's intriguing to you, if you want to go deeper into all of this and finally heal your relationship to food in your body and overcome these fights that you have with food in your body, this is for you. You get 12 pre-recorded modules and also an intro video. Every module comes with journaling prompts to invite you deeper into whatever topic it is. So that's the self-exploration. You receive a subconscious meditation that will help you reframe the way you see these topics and feel about these topics and what you truly believe on a subconscious level about these topics, because that's what it's creating your reality. You're put in a Facebook community where we celebrate wins on Wednesdays. And so you'll actually see on the Diet Culture Dropout page, I shared some wins that have happened in the program. Definitely not all of them, a fraction of them, but there are some on there if you want to see other wins that people have experienced while in this program. So that community is for wins. I do a live monthly Q&A. So if you are going through a module and you're like, I'm still confused on this, or I need guidance with this. Some people go through the whole thing of Diet Culture Dropout, and then something comes up later and they're like, oh, I would love to be refreshed on this topic. So those live Q&As are to ask questions or share struggles that are coming up in the moment. I go in there and do live Q&As once a month. So you can either come live or you can ask your questions and your questions will be answered. And I actually have recorded all of them up until now, and I'm going to continue to record them. And they are also in your Diet Culture Dropout portal when you enroll. So the way that I suggest using those is once you enroll, you'll have access to the pre-work and to module 1. And I suggest listening to the Q&As as podcast episodes. So replace your favorite podcast with those Q&As if that feels aligning for you. You do not have to go through the Q&As. It's not required for your journey, but they can just be really nice to hear those questions being asked in real time. So you get all of that. You'll get 2022 upgrades, which is going to be super powerful. And you get lifetime access to all of this. So if you have any questions about any of it, please DM me. I am more than happy to chat about any and all of it with you to figure out if it's a good fit for you. If you're going back and forth and you're like, I don't know if this is it or not, message me. I'll help you figure it out with honesty. And if it's not for you for some reason, then I absolutely will refer you out. I have no problem doing that. And I've definitely done that before. I'll refer you to another program or another coach that I think could help you even better, because over everything, your success is truly my top priority, whether you realize that success with me in one of my containers or not. So that is it for part 2. Stay tuned for a part 3 coming next week, and I will see you all then. Bye for now.